Now, today was the launch of the Labour Party's local election campaign, done by Keir Starmer. He chose Dudley in the Black Country quite deliberately, one of those Brexit seats that swung from Labour to the Conservatives. His message, the really big message, I think, that came from Starmer's speech was, look, if you're working people, we're on your side. Almost a reach back to a more traditional kind of Labour voting base, perhaps saying, look, you know what, I might live in North London, but we're interested in you here in the Midlands, the North and in the Red Wall. What really interested me was the stuff on levelling up and the fact that he trailed into this speech that Boris Johnson had some good ideas, which seemed very interesting. Now, GBNews' Christopher Hope sat down with Keir Starmer and asked him specifically, what did levelling up mean to him?
New Levelling Up Act, you've announced that in Dudley. Boris Johnson's idea. Would you give him a job in a Labour government? Have we got an interesting appointment for you?
No.
Definitely not?
Definitely not. And I'll tell you for why. Because levelling up as an idea, the sense that we need more regional equality, is really important. But in order to make that work, you need a viable plan, and you need to do the hard yards of implementing it. I'm afraid Boris Johnson didn't do that. But I intend to make sure that every area, whether it's Dudley, where we are now, or anywhere across the country, feels the benefit of a growing economy that I'm absolutely determined.
It's a good idea, needing better wiring, essentially.
Well, it needs a viable plan. It needs something which will actually work. But it also does, frankly, need the hard yards of delivery. And that's, I'm afraid, what we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Well, that was Sir Keir Starmer on levelling up. Well, Stella Tsantekidou, public affairs consultant and former Labour advisor, joins me in the studio. Stella, what's going on? 1 minute we have Rachel Reeves saying, I'm the new Mrs. Thatcher. And now we've got Sir Keir Starmer saying, look, Boris actually was absolutely right about all of this. He didn't deliver it. He didn't concentrate or focus on it, which I think actually a lot of Conservatives might agree with as well. But why is Keir Starmer talking about Boris Johnson?
I would love to say that it's because she wants to tease the Conservatives who have been having a lot of infighting about, was it a good idea to get rid of Boris Johnson? Look at how Sunak is doing. But I think he's far more serious to do that kind of thing. I think what he was trying to say is acknowledge the very true fact that levelling up was a good idea. The levelling up white paper had a lot of very good analysis, which Labour Party people agreed with. However, it wasn't delivered by Rishi Sunak. He scrapped it as soon as he became Prime Minister. So this is something that's bad. And this is something that he is saying when Labour is in government, they will be addressing.
So they're the same voters that were attracted to Boris Johnson's concept of levelling up, he thinks will come back to Labour.
Well, they must. They must, because what other choice do they have? They have either this or Rishi Sunak, who has not been very satisfactory with local government. You look at HS2, look at what happened with HS2, right?
Well, there may be other options in the mix as well, but we'll come to that at another time. I never really understood what levelling up was. I mean, I listened to Boris Johnson talking about it as I'd listened to the Northern Powerhouse from George Osborne before. Never meant anything to me. And I see Sir Keir Starmer talking about it today. I'm still none the wiser. I understand it's about regional inequality, right? And we've been having that debate as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
But it seemed that the only thing that Starmer said that might lead to that levelling up between regions was even more devolution and even more power to local mayors. And Stella, I fail to see how that leads of itself to more economic growth.
Well, even the Tory mayor on the street said that basically the way levelling up and devolution has been approached so far has ended up with local governments having to go cup in hand to the Westminster government and ask for money to please use on the things that they need to do. Now, we know that from the levelling up fund, only 10% has been used so far. Why is that? Is this because the councils, which are completely strapped for cash, 1 in 5 local councils across England may become bankrupt in the next year, right? So their situation is very dire. Is it because that these councillors are bad and they don't want to invest in their own area and they don't want to use up this money? Or is it perhaps because the management of this fund has not been good? Is it because it's been very top-down? Is it because the Westminster government and the Treasury has been quite sclerotic with these projects and how they're
that's possible. That's possible. But you see, I don't buy the idea that just chucking money at a region, chucking taxpayers' money from a centre at a region of itself works. I'm never convinced that money will be spent effectively. I personally would rather try enterprise zones. I'd rather try tax incentives. I'd rather have a look at net zero restrictions in some part of the country. And it just seems to me that, in a sense, Starmer doesn't really have a plan.
Not really. I will tell you what is in his plan. And he has made it very clear that he's not chucking money, right? This is one thing that I really liked about the speech. Is he's not trying to tell the voters, oh, don't worry, we're going to, or as soon as we are in government, there will be a magic money tree, and we're going to, exactly, there is no money. The austerity has taken every single last bit of it. The Tory government the Tory government has been salting the earth, as Keir Starmer said, waiting for their arrival. But
right or
but
not?
what he did
Starmer going to do?
One very good policy is he's saying we are going to give councils not just more power. Some areas are already devolved, and we've seen that the local mayors have been a success. We will have more of these devolved deals for the councils to be allowed to band together, the ones that not already have that. We will also give councils more long-term funding, which will allow them to have more effective long-term plans, which we know are more cost-effective, which has been a very big issue for local services for the councils, because basically, how do you retain social care workers, for example, or the much-needed staff in children's services when these people are very often on 6 months contracts, 9 months contracts? Why would people stay in these industries? And then, of course, what happens next? You need a lot of immigrants, because what other British worker would be okay with putting up with such unsustainable working conditions?
I mean, that's more of a national debate than it is a regional debate, but I understand that, and Labour will push that incredibly hard. Overall, you know, there's no doubt that Starmer is solid and doesn't make horrendous mistakes. Says he won't eat any Easter eggs this Easter, which I find a bit dull. But kind of, it almost sums him up. I don't have loads of chocolate over Easter, but it sort of sums him up. It's all a bit lacklustre, isn't it?
I'm not sure it's lackluster. I would say it's very managerial, which is what he has been promising all along. That's what he and Rachel Reeves have been saying. It's not that Rachel Reeves has been saying, you know, oh, I'm going to have Thatcher's policies, because it's really not at all. She has completely rejected the framework of Margaret Thatcher. What she said is, I'm going to govern with the same iron rule, and I'm going to give you the context, the stable economy, a stable, secure economy where businesses feel secure enough to invest, and that goes also for local councils.
And I'm going to be really boring.
Well, yes, you know what? A lot of people probably want them to be very boring.
Vote Labour, vote boring. That's Stella's advice to all of you.